Hey everybody, welcome to Metabolism 2.7, Diagnosing Elisa. Ooh, exciting day, diagnosing Elisa. Finally, we get to find out what's going on. And the good thing about that is then we'll know what we can do to help her, right? So first thing, as always, we got our warm-up and we have some information from Dr. Walker. Let's go ahead and read it. I'm going to jump into Amplify right here. Read the message below, then answer the questions below the message. To medical students, that's you. From Dr. Walker, subject Elisa Rodriguez. Today is an exciting day. You will get Elisa's test results and work together to use all the available evidence to make a diagnosis. Remember, our hospital medical team started you out with 4 possible claims about Elisa's condition. Lisa's feeling tired because she has diabetes, because she has anemia, because she has an injury to her pancreas, or because she has asthma. So for the warm-up, you are answering these questions down here. Starting off with, which condition were you specifically looking into? Remember, a lot of our previous lessons, you were supposed to specifically focus on just one of these conditions. Which one was it? Which of the body systems does it affect, and which molecules does it affect, ultimately getting to the cells in our body? So go ahead and answer those questions and then come right back to me. Next, activity 2, we're going to actually take a look at Elisa's test results. Now, it's important to pay attention to how we are going to then have our discussion based on this, but yeah, that will come in just a moment. So first, you've each become an expert on one condition. Remember, each of us has been, again, focusing on just one of those conditions. Using the sim, you ran tests and collected data on a model of a person with anemia, asthma, diabetes, or a pancreas injury. You also collected data on a model of a healthy body. We did this back in lesson 2.4, and we're going to need to access that information again. Today, you will receive similar data for Elisa. You'll work to identify which condition best matches her test results by comparing them to the healthy body and the body with a condition. Now, it's going to say this. It wants you to work in groups of 4. We're not going to be doing that, but here is what we are going to be doing. I posted a question in Google Classroom in your assignments section for Metabolism 2.7. In fact, it's right here. Metabolism 2.7 discussion. Okay, and you're going to answer this question in just a moment. So here is what you're supposed to be discussing with your group if we were actually in class and doing groups. The medical condition that you investigated, the medical condition affects the body's ability to get the molecules, which molecules, and then how does it work, okay? And you would be giving this information to the other people in your group. And each one of you would have a separate medical condition. And you're each explaining to the other how yours works. So the next thing that you want to do, think about, okay, if Elisa has the condition that I have studied, what will her test results show? What are we going to see? Now, her test results are going to show the different molecules absorbed by the cells, just like we were able to look at in the simulation. So here's where we want to jump out of this and go back to Google Classroom. And we want to answer this question right here. So what I want you to do is I want you to copy and paste the question part down here, and you just fill in your information. So what condition were you studying? Do you think Elisa has this condition based on her test results? How does the data support your answer? So if you say, yes, I do think she has whatever, diabetes, anemia, how does the data support your answer? If you don't, okay, well then how does the data support that answer? So yes or no, you need to say how the data actually supports your answer. Well, where do we even find her test results? In activity 2, right down here. These are Elisa's test results. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up 2.4. Do you remember when we did 2.4 and we looked at the condition that we were studying in the simulation and we collected the same data? We collected the same exact data. So go back to 2.4. Refer to the data that you collected for your condition and see how it compares to Elisa's data. Does it look similar? Does it look different? And in our Google Classroom question, that's what you'll put for down here where it says, how does the data support your answer? Does your data match? Does it not match? Now, some of you might look at it and say, well, it's not exactly a match. It's kind of off a little bit. Remember how we did 2 trials and you probably should have gotten different numbers for each of those trials? Well, is it close? If it's close enough, that might mean that, yeah, it is a match. But if it's kind of far off, that might mean, nah, it's probably not a match, okay? So answer that question in Google Classroom and then come back to me. Now for activity 3, this part I don't want you to work on until you have looked at some of the other responses from other students in our class and what they have written for an answer to that question in Google Classroom. I want you to make sure that you're looking at their responses too to see, hey, who thinks that they have a matching condition with Elisa? Why or why not? Because that's what you will be writing about, okay? So for activity 3, once you have looked at some of the other data and some of the other responses of other students, you're going to be writing an argument to support your diagnosis. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, well, here's what I finally think Elisa has. Here's why I think she has it. Diagnosis is a type of claim. We've been talking about claims. Our claims are answers to questions that we have. And the diagnosis for us was, well, what do we think Elisa has? Supporting a diagnosis with evidence is making a scientific argument. It's nice because it's laid out for you. It breaks it down for you and how you need to write your argument. In part 1, you're going to show what happens during normal metabolism. So for part 1 in our lesson here, activity 3, in this box, you're going to say, here's what happens with normal metabolism. The body does this. And the first part right here is oxygen. What happens with oxygen with somebody who has normal functioning metabolism? Then you're going to talk about starch and glucose. Again, if somebody has a normal functioning body, how would oxygen, starch, and glucose be affected? How would they metabolize? And next, in part 2, you're going to actually then argue for your claim. Which of these do you feel is supported by evidence or not supported by evidence? And then you're going to talk about why. Explain your diagnosis. Start your argument writing something like this. My group believes that Elisa has or does not have, go on. I think that she does or does not have the condition because... And here's where it all comes together. You're going to write your explanation for how a person with this condition, what is going to happen to the molecules in their body? Where will they be able to flow freely? Where will they get stopped, basically? At what point does the system break down? And then how does that compare to Elisa's test results? Does it look like the same thing is happening with hers? So write that. Take your time. Please give me a well thought out explanation and make sure you back it up with evidence and then come back to me. Second to last thing is the first part of your homework, revising your argument. Now there's a few questions down here. You've written out your argument for which condition you think Elisa has. You included evidence and you talked about why that evidence matters. So here I want you to basically read your argument again with this question in mind, or this statement in mind. I stated my claim clearly. Do you do that in your argument? Choose one. Do you include evidence to support the claim? Do you have those numbers from the sim and from Elise's test results? Do you include that in your claim? You probably should. And if not, then you would probably say, well, no, not really, or not at all. You want to get that into your argument. So if you don't, make sure you do. I made my reasoning clear by explaining how the evidence supports the claim. A person with this condition you would see numbers that look like this. Elisa's numbers look like this. Therefore, it appears that Elisa might have this condition. Something along those lines. So please look at your argument with all of these statements in mind and be honest with yourself and say, do I really do this? Do I state my claim clearly? Do I include evidence? For any parts that you could revise them right here. I'm not going to ask you to write out your entire claim again, but just those parts that you think you need to revise. Once you do that, you're going to click on the next homework assignment, the self-assessment. And when it says optional, you know it is not optional. I do expect you to do this. I do want you to do this. This is a great way for us to check our own understanding. There are a number of questions here where you will say yes or not yet. You will respond to each one of them and then explain your choice. For instance, this one. I understand what molecules Elise's cells need and where they come from. Okay, what are those molecules that Elise's cells need? Well, hey, let's give you this one. There's oxygen, right? There's glucose, and there is amino acids. That's right. And where do they come from? Do you understand that? If you do, if you put yes, well then explain that you understand what they are and where they come from. If you don't understand, well, what do you know about those molecules? What do you know about what cells need? Just whatever your level of understanding is at that point, write that down. Well, I know cells need energy, but I don't exactly know how they get it. Great, then write that down. That's fine. With all of these questions, think about them, say either yes or not yet, and then give me an explanation. If you say yes, then for sure, give me that explanation. And if you put no, well, just tell me what you do know about that topic, okay? For this last one, what do you still wonder about Elise's condition or how her body gets what it needs to function? Don't put nothing. Don't put IDK. Don't put no, I don't wonder anything. Put something in here. I expect you to put something in here, even if it's a question you know the answer to. Maybe even think of just something that somebody else might have a question about. If you can't think of a question somebody else might have, then just write something that you understand, that you do know about. Okay? So that's it. That is lesson 2.7. We will be having some good discussion about this when we meet in class about what condition you think Elisa has. All right, so that's it. Hasta.